Imagine a world in which menopause is recognized as a healthy, organic step in one's evolutionary journey, stepping into the vital and powerful role of serving your community and the world. That's a quote taken from my guest on today's podcast, whose vision is to place menstrual cycle awareness in the heart of every boardroom, classroom, and dinner table discussion on the planet. That's pretty powerful stuff, and my guests have come together to form the Red School, which in essence beautifully brings about awareness of the menstrual cycle and conscious menopause, and is taught through various mediums. What Alexandra Pope and Sjanie Hugo Wurlitzer have created is truly inspiring. They describe it as a radical new approach to health, creativity, leadership, and spiritual life. Hosts of the Menstruality podcast and authors of Wild Power, Discover the Liberating Power of Menopause to Awaken Authority, Purpose, and Belonging, they are also the program creators of the Menstruality Medicine Circle. Alexandra and Sjanie share a wealth of knowledge supporting and educating women on a global scale, from helping mothers nurture their daughters through puberty and the beginning of the menstrual cycle, right through to menopause and beyond. I think we're going to have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Now, welcome, Alexandra. We are very sad not to have Sjanie with us today because she's actually not feeling too great, so please do pass on our best wishes to her. But we're delighted that you are with us, so thank you for joining us.
I'll channel her as well as myself, Morven.
Perfect. It sometimes works like that. When you work together with somebody, you know them so well, don't you?
It is a bit like that, actually. We are so kind of seamless together.
Well, we start each episode just to try and get a bit of an insight into our guests, asking them about their morning routine and whether they have one and what they do to set up their day.
Oh, my goodness. That's a great question. Thank you. I am someone who loves the mornings are incredibly precious to me. They set my day, and I'm a morning person. I'm not an evening person. And I begin my day. I am a disciplined person, actually, I have to say. But I get up quite early, actually 5:30 I get up, and I do breathing exercises. I do the Wim Hof breathing now, actually. I used to do Buteyko. I find that really good. It just clears my head, and if I've had a bad night, it sets me up well. And then I will do some sort of meditation for half an hour or so. And then I kind of just sort of say my prayers for the day almost, I make kind of clear choices for myself about, what I'm wanting and so on. And then I get up and get my breakfast and everything. And then I will do exercise. That's my time for exercise in the morning. It's when I have the best energy. So this morning, because the sun was shining and it wasn't raining, it's just been raining and raining so much, I thought, I am walking the fields. So I went out for a great walk for an hour today, which was wonderful. So basically, I do sort of my spiritual practice, if you like, and then some sort of exercise and so on. And I get my food set up for the day, because once I start working, I'm off. And it's really, we always stop for lunch, obviously. But I work a full day.
That's great. So a proper routine in the morning, because not everybody has one. And it's lovely that you do take time to yourself to set yourself up for the day. But let's talk a little bit about the Red School. I'm interested to know your background, Alexandra, and what led you and Sjanie to set up the Red School together.
Yes, Morven. I was a teacher way back in the mists of time. That's what I trained as, and I taught English in secondary schools. And then I trained to be a psychotherapist. So that was my sort of professional background. And I practiced as a psychotherapist in private practice for about 20 years. And I was actually living in Australia. I moved to Australia when I was 30. I became a psychotherapist. And then at menopause, I changed everything. As all good menopause people do, you change your whole life. And it's not called the change for nothing. So I had this respectable life, as I like to say, as a professional. And actually, I am a teacher. I mean, it's what I am now. And my psychotherapy training was very, very important. But the work that I'm doing, in a sense, was something that was sort of courting me in the background. And then in my 20s, I I briefly went on hormonal contraception because I thought, that's the kind of responsible thing to do. And then something in me woke up. I don't know what it was. And I just knew no. And I learnt about fertility awareness. So through my 20s, I was practicing fertility awareness, which is being able to chart the signs, read your body for the signs of ovulation. And so that you practice, you have some barrier method, or you don't have sex at those moments when you're ovulating, if you don't want to have children, that is, which I didn't. So I had this consciousness of my menstrual cycle, but it was very kind of nuts and boltsy, but it was very empowering. It's very empowering it's fantastic. I think every girl growing up should know about how to chart their cycle, just to be able to read their body in that way. It's terrific. But the big wake up call came just before my 31st birthday, and I got the menstrual pain from hell, which I'd never had before. And this pain came back each month, and it would last for 3 days or more. And this pain was hell on earth. And I made the radical decision to listen to my body. I wasn't going to take drugs every month. That was not the solution. I did not want surgery. I just knew my body was talking, and I was going to listen. I just don't know where that came from, that decision just to believe in and follow my body. And it all sort of unfolded from there, because what I had to do was give space for menstruation so I could just be with the pain. And I started to see a whole kind of new world within there. I was growing a new consciousness around being aware of my cycle in this way. And it became my medicine for healing, because in a way, cycle awareness is stress management. You learn how to manage your energy and your stress levels and so on. And this is foundational for healing menstrual problems. So I healed my body with natural means. And I thought, this information should not go to waste. And so I began running these menstrual health workshops at Sydney's Royal Hospital for Women, and teaching this different way of looking at the menstrual cycle and menstruation. And it really spoke to women. And suddenly having this whole kind of new story and new thinking and new understanding about the power, the psychological and the spiritual power of the menstrual cycle, basically. That's, I moved beyond the biology to really understanding the spiritual and the psychological and spiritual forces at work. And so I wrote my first book when I was in Australia, and I also wrote a book on the pill, the dangers of the pill, with a colleague. And then it was, so I was growing this work more and more, and I wasn't just teaching it to people who were suffering. I moved beyond menstrual health. And then it was menopause that changed everything. I thought, I don't want to be a therapist anymore. I just want this work on menstruality that I was growing. I want to just do this. I want to teach it everywhere. I'm over, being a psychotherapist. It's done. But I've got great skills, and I feed that into my work. And I also knew that my time in Australia was over. So by the time I left there, I'd been there for 25 years. And I moved back to the UK to live. And that's where I met Sjanie, and we went on to teach and run things together. And then we formally set up Red School it's probably about 7 years or so, or maybe about 7 years or so ago now. But we'd been teaching, we've been working together for about 13 years now.
Yeah, and here we are, and you've hit it just as everybody's talking about and becoming more aware of their bodies now. I think what's really interesting is you've started tuning into your body. And I know certainly this is probably not what you want to hear, but I think a lot of the times I try to ignore my cycle and get on with life and not listen to my body. So actually it's an annoyance rather than actually listening to how I'm feeling and maybe making allowances for how I'm feeling, which is clearly what you did when you had the pain and you had to do that.
It's precise. Yes, we are actually given the message to kind of get over it and get on with things, and to just pretend it doesn't exist. And it's a bit like pretending nature doesn't exist, that the seasons don't change. It's like, because we talk about the inner seasons of your menstrual cycle, you move there are 4 phases to the menstrual cycle, and your mood and energy changes through those phases. And they're akin to this, it's similar to the seasons of the year. And it's like trying to pretend you're in summer all the time and wearing summer clothes when it's, 1 degrees outside.
What's interesting now, I've spoken to quite a few women in the industry now, and I think the awareness of listening to your body is perhaps coming now more mainstream because elite athletes are having to do it. So it's being noticed with female athletes. They have to listen to their body. They have to change their training depending on what stage they are in their cycle to allow for the most optimal training. So the research has been done that way. But why not actually use that and bring that knowledge into the mainstream and allow us to all operate in the same level?
It is precisely that, Morven. I mean, that's what, the menstrual cycle is, this stress-sensitive system. But it's when you're connected to it, you are connected to yourself in the most unique way. You're connected to your energy levels, you're connected to your emotional life, and you're connected to your nervous system, actually, to what you can manage with regard to stress and so on. So it is this unbelievably good wellness guide to optimum performance, if you like, and that each phase of the menstrual cycle is an integral part of it. And of course, menstruation is always, it's always, it interrupts things. It's what it does. It interrupts stuff, because you suddenly need to stop and drop and, step away from things. And it always feels like an inconvenience. But I like to say, yeah, being a human in a body is an inconvenience. You're not a freaking robot. And actually, learning to stop, learning to slow down at menstruation actually opens you up to the most amazing powers, which we write about in our first book. And it's like you renew your system, you renew your energy. So it's actually a system of sustainability. And trying to live like you're not a cyclical being, like just living like a machine, going, guess what happens? The machine packs up. Because machines don't keep going forever, and you're not a machine, So when you're in touch with your menstrual cycle and honoring it, what you're doing is you're operating in the most effective and sustainable and creative. You just become so much more creative, the more creative, sustainable way ever. It's just a no-brainer not to do.
And looking to our listeners who are probably more at the perimenopausal, perhaps menopause and beyond stage, how does your teaching apply to them? How do you deal with that for perimenopause symptoms, for example?
It's everything, Morven, because your menopause is the final chapter of your menstruating years. It's not this sort of unattached phenomena that you just bump into one day. It's you evolve into menopause through your menstruating years. So if you're connected to your cycle, that is, you're practicing menstrual cycle awareness. That means just knowing what day of your cycle you're on, knowing your strengths and vulnerabilities through the cycle, and honoring your energy, honoring your mood as best you can within the context of that. You're very much in touch with yourself. So because the cycle is stress sensitive, as you get older and in your 40s, progesterone, the hormone of progesterone, can start to decrease. And progesterone is this wonderful stress management hormone. It just is a wonderful buffer. It's very soothing of the system. So when that's starting to drop, it means you can't manage stress in the same way. You can't push yourself in the same way. So if you're starting to feel in your 40s, a little more tired or crankier or, not coping with things in the same way, it is telling you, your being is giving you feedback. And this is the time to up your self-care. It's not a debility. It's not, a disability. It's not, It is simply you are getting older and your needs are changing. And as you get older, you cannot compromise your health anymore. I mean, you can get away with it in your 20s. Let me tell you, 40s onwards, you don't get away with it. And so what you're getting is clues about what you're needing. So if you're feeling more tired or you're just getting crankier and so on, it's probably a sign you need more spaciousness for yourself. You need more rest. It may be that your diet is not sufficient because, if you're mineral deficient, if you're eating a diet that's not sufficiently nourishing, that can affect your mood and energy profoundly. So in your 40s, when you're starting to notice changes, you step up to that. But it's not only physical changes. You're going to notice emotional changes going on of like feeling, how can I put it? The energies you feel when you come into your premenstrual phase more. You feel more difficult, you become more critical, and so on. You're going to notice that in your 40s. And those are powers. You've got those kind of powers coming on board. And if you are tired and under sort of nourished, and you've got that critical energy in you, you just come out as reactive and shitty. And you're wasting that energy. You're completely wasting it. Whereas if you are learning to adjust to this energy, actually that critical energy is growing into a very fine discernment. You become much more discerning about what you're going to do and not do. And all this is really, really important preparation for menopause. You don't want to just crash into menopause. You are sort of inducted into it over time. So pay attention, take care of yourself in your 40s, really notice your menstrual cycle and get support if you can, if you've got resources, treatments and so on. Things like acupuncture and, there's so many wonderful herbs out there and things like that. But just changing your diet and giving yourself more time and space.
Yeah, we talk a lot about that. It doesn't need to be an inevitability. It doesn't need to be the doom and the gloom of the symptoms that so many people suffer. And I'm not meaning to in any way minimize or take away from some people who have very extreme symptoms. But actually, there's a lot of things that you can do to take control. As you say, so you listen to your body, you work out where your deficiencies are, and then you try and support your body through this period. I love you describe so we've talked a little bit about perimenopause, although you don't like that, but the lead up, the sort of journey up to menopause. And I know that you've described menopause as a homecoming. Can you unpack a little what that means to you?
I'd love to, Morven. Your the menstruating years are a process of getting to know yourself. So the menstrual cycle is this self-care guide, but it's also this guide into yourself more and more. And of course, our first book describes all that, and we run courses and trainings all about that, how that happens. And menopause is like the final chapter of this journey of discovery into who you truly are. It's a spiritual journey you're on. In the process of going through menopause, what you do is you really let go of identities that aren't you anymore. So I let go of being a therapist, but it may be jobs you've done all your life. You go, geez, I can't do that anymore. You could probably do the job standing on your head. I was actually the best therapist I've ever been at that point. And I thought, and I'd built up a really good practice, and I'm going, really? I have to stop now just when I'm kind of getting it? It's taken me 20 years to hone this. That was over. It was over. My spirit said no. And so you're letting go of stuff, but then what you're doing, Morven, this is the exciting bit, but it does take time and it's not always easy emotionally because it's scary in places. It's like, yikes, what am I going to do with my life? But what you're doing is you're creating this space, inner spaciousness. And then this is the magic of menopause for me, and we write about it in our book, Wise Power. It's your inner life starts to speak to you more and more. And it's like this knowing that rises up in you. And you sort of, it is like a homecoming. You start to realize, oh, this is who I really am. Oh, wow. And I just really got I got my own nature. You know, you try to be, I think, you know, we do try to be all things to all people. You know, society expects certain things and you do your best to be that kind of person, you know. And then at menopause, you go, and I'm going to swear now, sorry, fuck that. You know, that is just so not me. That is not me. I am just not that kind of person. This is who I am. And there's this kind of liberation that happens. It's really amazing and wonderful.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the courses and the programs that you run at Red School so that our listeners can get more of an understanding, particularly around the programs that you run for menopause. Can you share a bit more about them, please?
I certainly can. We're actually just running one at the moment. So in our book, Wise Power, the book on menopause, we describe the 5 stages of the kind of initiation you go through. The 5 stages you have to go through to find this belonging, if you like, this home in yourself. And so we go into great detail unpacking that. And we also describe all the feelings that people get in menopause, you know, the anger, the grief, the anxiety. And we put that into the context of these 5 phases. There's meaning at work. You know, your feelings are meaningful. They're not just arbitrary. And so our course that we run, our Menopause, the Great Awakener, it's called, is over 6 weeks, and it explores these 5 phases of the menopause journey. So we offer some teachings, and then we've developed these really super exercises that really take people into a sort of interior experience of something, and the kind of medicine, if you like, they need, the support they're needing within there. It's hard to describe the exercise, except the exercises are pretty powerful. So we have this teachings, and then we do an exercise. This is in a live call. And then we have, you know, time for sharings at the end. The calls are about an hour and 3/4. And we have a community group around that is, it's not on Facebook, it's private, it's in something called Circle, where people can share their experiences and support each other. And we have mentors supporting that. And then we also have listening circles that people can join. There's about 3 of those where people can come in kind of real time and be heard and get some mentoring. And also, we encourage what we call listening partnerships. So not everyone necessarily wants one, but we really encourage it because it's just the most wonderful thing to have an ally that you sit with and talk. Well, you listen to each other. It's quite a very specific process. So we have that as part of our program as well. It's a very, and the punchline to all this, Morven, is that you can join the program for free in subsequent years, because menopause takes place over a period of time, you know, a number of years. We've got people coming back for their 4th year, and they're sort of moving through their menopause, so the stages now make more sense for them, and they're further down the track. So it's a very it's a course that keeps on giving, I like to say.
And do you find the women who join your course, are they experience a sort of sense of despair? Is that the point they've reached before they come to you, or is it just through word of mouth? How are they finding you?
Nowadays, it's through our podcast, and we've just done an amazing series of conversations. I've actually been interviewing people about the power of their menopause in their postmenopause life. We've had about 8 conversations so far. It was called the Wise Power Retreat series, and those conversations, we have had the most phenomenal feedback from those conversations, and people joining that retreat. We've never had a response like it. And it's menopause. People are desperate for something, so they're looking, and they find us in part, but also we're out there on social media. Obviously, we use a lot of. We've got a very good, well networked. We've got a good email list, and our community shares things, spreads things, especially around menopause. And it's interviews like this, podcast interviews like this, and it's the fact that we've been at it for a long time. Morgan, we started off just running in-person workshops actually, and it really was word of mouth. Um, Actually, word of mouth was huge, and it grew and grew from that.
Emotionally, how do you find the women that are coming on your courses? Do they see an emotional change throughout the course? Do you see it as they go through the course?
Absolutely, more than anything, people feel a sense of relief, like they're not going mad, because people just say, I feel like I'm going mad. And we go, no, 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 no. You're not going mad. You're actually waking up. You just don't have the languaging. You don't have the framing to understand what's happening. And what we give you is the framing that will hold you and give context to the feelings, the mad feelings that you're having, like, I want to walk out of my life and never come back, you know. Yes, I love my children. I love my partner, but I never ever want to see them ever again. You know, it's sort of crazy thoughts. Actually, it's all entirely meaningful once you have the understanding of the kind of spiritual infrastructure that's at work in menopause. So people just feel so much relief and understanding. They feel heard, they feel met, and they start to feel, because they feel relief, they then start to feel more kind of choice about what they need. And they start to take action on the things they have to change or do for themselves.
And if you here's one for you that's slightly out there question. If you were in charge of menopause policy in the UK government, what would you do differently to what's happening at the moment?
What I would do is I would make cycle awareness just because it's cycle awareness we need, and then menopause is naturally part of that conversation. And to have a conversation about menopause without any kind of context feels to me a bit kind of meaningless or weird. So what we need in workplaces is awareness of the menstrual cycle, that this is a basic self-care tool and a stress management tool, and that people just there's a kind of comfort and ease and normalcy about it. There's no fuss about it. And some people are very private about their menstrual cycles. They don't want to talk about it, and that's respected. And others like to talk about it, and it's open. But there's just an atmosphere of normality about it and just ease. And it's just, oh yeah, that's just one of those. It's just part of our how we care for our part of what health and well-being in the workplace. It's just part of that. It's just an integral part of that. And so then the menopause conversation is much more organic. It kind of grows out of that. So when people start to feel changes, one, they're getting feedback, as I said, about their health and what their needs are. So they can then, if they know it's a cycle aware place, they know there's safety then to actually articulate things. I think this is really important. But also, the interesting thing about the menstrual cycle is it gives the company feedback about the levels of stress in the company that everybody is affected by. I feel menopause women and people are a bit like the canary in the mine shaft. Their symptoms, yes, it's telling them that they're exhausted, they're stressed, but it's actually saying something about the conditions we're all working under. So creating a cycle aware workplace is a workplace that's flexible and respectful of difference.
And funnily enough, the pandemic, sorry, it's given us almost a bit of that flexibility. I think that people can choose the days that they work from home, and for whatever reason, and you don't perhaps need to explain to your boss why you might be working from home that day, and you can't face seeing anybody, and you want to just be in a warm, cozy room with a hot water bottle. And I think that's actually one of the real positives that have come out for women, particularly after the pandemic.
I think that's such a good observation, Morgan. Yes, absolutely. We've discovered we can work in all sorts of different ways. And you're absolutely right. Yes. Yeah. We've discovered we can do that. And that is a real bonus.
Alexandra, This is going to be a tough one, I think, because I'm going to ask you for if you can have a top tip for our listeners who are dealing with perimenopause. I've got a guess about what you're going to say, but I'm going to wait and see what you do say.
My top tip, it's about creating more space in your life, more spaciousness. It's slowing down, doing less. It's one or two things packed into one. Okay. And
Hmm.
the moment you give yourself all space, you just know things. You know what you need, what you want. So it is about spaciousness. And that means to have that spaciousness means actually having to say no to things.
Oh, I love it. That was not what I was expecting you to say.
What were you expecting?
I thought it was going to be about listening to your body because I've really taken that from you today about actually trying to listen to what your body's telling you and where you are in your cycle. And that's something that I'm going to do after our conversation today is actually listen because it does tell me things all the time and I try and ignore them, which is so ridiculous now that I think about it and we're chatting about it. So thank you for that.
Oh, that's great to hear, Maud. I'm really happy about that, actually, because that is really, the ultimate message too. And I was thinking with the spaciousness, the moment you have spaciousness, you can feel yourself and you can hear yourself because your being is speaking to you. So yes, I think we can bundle all that up together in one, can't we?
Well, Alexandra, it's been an absolute joy and I've learned so much. And I think the work that you're doing with Red School is incredible. And you're certainly ahead of your time, I think, and a trendsetter. So now it's becoming a bit more mainstream. I'm sure it's even more successful than it was before. And please pass on our best wishes to Sjanie as well. I hope she's feeling better soon. And maybe we'll have a chat with her in the future. But it's been absolutely lovely chatting to you today. Thank you so much.
I definitely think you should have a chat with her in the future. She's terrific. Thank you so much, Morgan. It's been a total delight talking with you.